Thank you very much. Hey, welcome everybody. We're very excited to be here today. Uh, this is a what we call Let's Do Well presentation. It's an employee financial wellness. It's brought to you by Halkeen, by the three different homes, the Corcoran House, the Brigham House, and Prospect House. The subject we're doing today is on saving versus spending. And I do know that we are dating ourselves with the image that's on the screen. For those of you who don't know, that's from Mad Magazine. Craig, I don't know, when did Mad Magazine go out of publication? Like the 90s?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. I mean, I watched it, but I didn't buy it regular. So,
Yeah. But the reason we do it is twofold. There's one reason specifically is because whenever we try to do any of these presentations, we do try to be a little bit lighter on the subject. So we do try to find a little bit of fun, a little bit of humor in some of this stuff. So the reason for using a cartoon. But the second, more importantly, is that that dynamic, that push and pull that takes place for every single one of us every single day, we know we should be saving, but there's always something that we want to be spending on. And how do we balance that? How do we figure that out? How do we make that connect for all of us? And that's really what we try to do in all of this. Real quick, the agenda, we'll share it with you just so you know for everybody on a little housekeeping. We are recording this. We will share that back to each of the locations so that then they can share it out, or you can get a copy of the recording. We just ask if you do have questions, please use the chat box because that's the easiest way to raise your hand or ask a question. Just know you can do it at any time. When we introduce the speakers, we'll just go through that in terms of what you can do. But just know anytime you have a question, please drop it in the chat box. We'll try to answer it, or we'll hang out at the end to answer the questions then. So the agenda, a little bit on us, we'll do an introduction to us, but then, being honest with your money, we think that's one of the biggest factors that can take place. How can you save if you don't know what you spend? And then some steps that you can take, some ideas, some thoughts on how to be better at either saving more or spending less. So real quick for your presenters, my name is Tom Alessi. I am the president of the Aries Foundation. I've been in financial services for now, I'm going, God bless, in my 27th year. The initials after my name just let you know that I am actually a certified fiduciary. Unlike the folks on TV that tell you they're a fiduciary, I'm actually a certified fiduciary, which just means anytime I'm sitting down giving guidance and advice to anyone, I am always and only compelled to do what I think is in their best interest. My co-presenter, Craig, can you introduce yourself, please?
sure. So I'm Craig Richardson, Vice President of the Aries Foundation. I've been doing this a little over 20 something years myself, and I specialize in working with families and individuals to help them define their financial goals and have a better relationship with their money.
And hanging out in the background there is Melanie. Melanie, if you can introduce yourself real quick.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melanie Krupa. I'm the operations manager for the Aries Foundation. Not only do I keep Tom and Craig on track, but I keep relations with a lot of the organizations we deal with.
And so, any of the questions that you're dropping in, Melanie is here to make sure that we get those answered, we get them fielded. So just know again, drop them into the chat box. That's the best way if you've got any questions that come up. Real quick on the foundation itself. So the Aries Foundation for Financial Education, we are a local nonprofit. We are located in Newton. You can find us on the web. It's ariesfoundation.org. The mission behind Aries, the reason that we did this is trying to help everyone have a better relationship with their money. See, because for everybody, that's a different connotation. Everybody's got a different dynamic when it comes to handling their cash, handling their finances, and different ways of dealing with that and looking at it. And all we try to do, myself, Craig, Melanie, the rest of the Aries team, is try to help everyone take a little bit of that emotional connotation that goes along with money when we're dealing with our finances. And Craig, speaking of that, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things that comes up or really gets involved with this is this idea of being, in a relationship with money, and that one of the most impactful ways that we can be in whatever relationship, whether it's a personal, it's professional, whatever that relationship may be, is to be honest in that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it does help to make communication a little bit easier. But I think in this particular case, it's really about being honest with your money, but with yourself. Where am I spending my money? What are my spending habits? Do I have a real handle on where my what my spending is? And I think a lot of people will say, well, count some things, not count other things, and not, like I said, be completely honest with themselves about where their money's going.
Right, and that's the biggest factor. Like that whole idea of that looking inward or looking in the mirror or how whatever cliche you want to use with that. Like I'm spending my money, as Craig said, for a lot of people out there, they I don't want to say tell themselves, but have this like I have a budget or I have a spending analysis or spending flow that I have. But that's sort of the over here thing, Craig, not the hey, I spend other money, it's over here. I don't put it in that pile, if you
Doesn't
will.
count, right?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't count, right? So the first step there is just understanding that, having that understanding of I'm being truthful with how I deal with money myself. What are
Mhm.
some of those behaviors, some of those triggers that cause me to get a little irrational or crazy, to either go spending or to go do something? That's the first step for everyone. I think the second one is realizing that sometimes there are those triggers that push us. And, for us here at Aries, a big part of that is social media, Craig. Just the idea that there's so much out there where people are, I'm going here, I'm visiting there, I'm buying this type of thing.
Yeah, it's a justification for something that you know you really can't afford, but you want it anyway.
Just because you see somebody else doing it.
Yeah, sometimes it's peer pressure, right? Exactly. I deserve that. Why shouldn't I be going there? Right.
Right. And so, understanding that a lot of times we do fall into that. Again, this is just an individual thing, but it happens a lot. They're like, oh, sure. Or everybody's going to this show or this game or this thing. Sure, I'm going to go. May not fit into my monthly spending, but I'm going to do it. And
Right.
that's really where part of that comes in.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then lastly, that this is, a just, we understand it's a plastic world that credit cards are one of those things, but this trap, Craig, of the separation of me from my money, where I'm not really letting go of my money. I'm just either, pushing a button on the screen or giving a piece of plastic and swiping and my money is gone.
Yeah, but that's all for your convenience, Tom.
Yeah. Yes. I should know that, right? It's
You're
it's all it's
making it
all with your
easier for
best
you.
intentions and best things for it. We're going to talk about some of this when it comes to having, cards and the way that works. But just know a lot of times we get caught up in this and we deal with people that they've got, not only multiple credit cards, but then they've got store cards, they've got travel cards, and it gets a little overwhelming sometimes, right? When we've got four, five, six cards and we're trying to juggle all of those pieces, Craig.
Well, it does make it a little bit more complicated and also keeping track of what's on what. And then all the different interest rates these days, where you have a revolving balance, are you paying it off? So yeah, trying to keep it simple if you can.
Right. So, being better with your money, and you have to forgive us with this one, but this is something that we really, really believe in, and that's that we're going to try to avoid using the B word as much as possible. And that B word for us is budget. See, if we were live in an audience, we usually ask folks, anybody in the audience ever tried to go on a diet, right? So, the hands go up, my hand goes up because, everybody's tried to go on a diet. Well, dieting is a very, very restrictive thing, right? Dieting, you're told, eat this, don't eat that. I can only have this and, only a little of that. And it's a very, very restrictive. Budgeting becomes the same thing, right? The problem with most of the budgeting or budget tools or budget strategies out there is they take on the same sort of mentality as a diet, right? Spend here, don't spend there. No, 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 you can't buy that. You can only buy this, that type of thing. And inevitably we're going to backslide. It happens to all of us. I always joke about the fact, for me, it's that piece of chocolate cake that's calling my name. And, if I'm trying to be on a diet, I'm going to backslide. I'm going to have that piece of chocolate cake. It's going to happen.
I'm oppositionally defiant, so I'm going to just do it because I'm not supposed to.
Yes. Just to heck with that. So for us, when we talk about this, we talk more in the idea of cash flow, and we'll get into that in a little bit, in the idea of cash flow, because it's more of a dynamic of thinking that, hey, money comes in, money goes out, versus trying to set up a budget. The whole idea, the mentality, and if you look online, go on to anything, listen to anybody, the first thing they're going to tell you to do is to do a budget. And for most people, it just inevitably makes them just cringe and close down because it's so restrictive. Wait, you're telling me I can only spend my money here? I can't spend it over here, but I want to spend it over here. And so just know that for us, when we talk to folks with this, it's more of a dynamic, the cash flow versus that whole restrictive budget type of thing.
And then the first thing you're asking me to do is math. I don't want to do math.
Yeah, no. So what was I doing? I was doing something this morning. It was like, oh God, they're going to ask me math. I don't want to deal with that. Why are they asking me that? Okay, so this is more of the conundrum, catch 22, again, cliches, however you want to look at it, but you can't save until you know what you were spending. And the reason we bring this up is that, Craig, I know this the statistic we were looking at, it was like 54% of the population can't tell you what they spent last month.
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely. Not
And
without going
so
back.
if
Mhm.
you don't know what you spend, like how are you really being able to save if I don't know what I'm spending? And the problem where it really catches most people or trips us up is that you really shouldn't be spending until you know what you want to be saving. And Craig, most people no idea how much or what they truly want to save.
Well, I think the issue becomes for a lot of people is ask them, what's your spending? What's your saving strategy? So whatever's left over at the end of the week, maybe I'll put some of it in my savings account. But then they'll find something else to spend it on, so it never ends up in the savings account. So
Right. It just ends up going out. That bright shiny thing that I wanted to buy, I'm going to buy it. Look, I have money, I'm going to buy it. So that becomes that ongoing battle. And that's why we said that cartoon image that we used at the beginning. This is the battle that occurs. It goes back and forth. I want to save, but I don't know what I spend, but I really shouldn't spend until I know what I want to save. So it's this whole duality that occurs, this back and forth conversation inside everybody all the time. And so
mhm.
like I said, like for us at Aries, what we do is we really talk about cash flow, right? Because cash flow talks about income. And Craig, most of us are very good at knowing income, what's coming in. I either got my paycheck, I've got, what I have for monies coming into my household.
Yeah, I know, like you said, what's coming in to the penny, when the check's supposed to clear, did it come in on Thursday, did it come in on Friday? Wait, I'm short 50 cents.
Yeah.
They know
Right. Yes,
that.
that we have down. That we know, and we're very, very good at that. Where we get tripped up is on expenses. And we'll go through expenses in a little bit here, but know that expenses break down into two different buckets:
Mhm.
fixed expenses and discretionary spending. Fixed expenses would be those things that we know we got to pay, the rent, the mortgage, utilities, food in the house. And discretionary becomes a lot of other stuff that we deal with. And that's where we sort of get lost. But Craig, if my income is more than my outflow, I then
Mhm.
have a
A surplus, which is great.
surplus. Yes, that's the case. Now, unfortunately, for a lot of people that we deal with, their outflow outpaces their income, in which case, excuse me, they wind up with a deficit. This is
Yes,
where we're ending up in what Craig and I like to refer to as too much month at the end of my money.
that is correct.
So how do we deal with that? How do we look? How do we sort of deal with this and to understand as you're going through this process and looking at it and building it out and why again that whole budgeting thing really becomes that drag down besides like Craig said, besides the fact that it's math,
Mhm.
it's wait, I've got to try to figure out everything that I'm doing?
Yeah, it can be a little bit all encompassing. Yep. Or overwhelming.
Right. And so just understand it's an ongoing process to start, right?
Mhm.
The whole idea and the whole concept is that this isn't something you're going to solve tomorrow or a weekend, but it's something that you've got to take on as a project to say, wait, I can look at the next month's spending and figure out what I spent for a month and then sort of build from there as a process,
Yeah.
right?
And it's a good place to start. Like you said, you know what your larger bills are, like your mortgage, your rent, your utilities, your car payment. And it kind of takes a little bit of the emotional aspect out of it because those are things you know you have to pay.
Right.
So you're not making judgment calls on any of the spending there. So
Right.
it's a good place to start. At least get those things listed out.
Right. And they do break down to static versus variable, right? When we're looking at those must pay expenses, the rent of the mortgage for the most part is going to be the same number month over month. If you're a renter, it might increase the next year, but basically if we're going through a 12-month period, it's going to be the same number.
Hmm.
The utilities, obviously, we just went through a blizzard. The difference between, what the heating bill is now versus in the summer versus cooling, electric, gas, etc. Those things, those will be variable, just the way that works, right? In terms of going through it. So you have those expenses. And Craig, we're very, very good at paying those expenses. The bill comes in, I make sure the bill gets paid.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of my clients are very good at making sure their bills are paid. They don't want the electric turned off. They don't want to have to worry about being evicted. So they make sure that stuff gets done. So,
And so what we really try to get everybody to sort of get into the mindset with this, to say, okay, very good at paying the bill, then, one of the things that you should be doing is thinking of yourself, whatever you're saving for, and we'll talk about savings goals in a little bit and how that all works, but to treat yourself like you're a bill.
mhm.
Whatever that saving is that you're trying to put away, that's a bill. I've got to save that amount of money, just like I do the rent, just like I do the utilities, the food, whatever the case may be. I'm putting that away. It's a bill. I've got to pay it.
And that's a hard grip for a lot of people because they tend to put themselves last. So they don't see us putting money away for themselves as being that important. But it is.
Right. And then we can get into the fun stuff. Then we can get into the discretionary spending, whatever's left over. Like Craig talked about before, it usually ends up being whatever's left over, I'm going to put into savings, but there generally isn't anything left over by that time. So then nothing gets saved.
Right.
We talk about tracking your spending. This is more of that, just trying to get a handle on where you spend your money. For us, we are never going to ever sit down with somebody and tell you where to spend your money
Hmm.
or how to spend your money. For us, we just want you to be aware of where you spend your money, and then more importantly, why you spend it the way you do.
Yeah, I mean, the issue here, Tom, a lot of times is when I go through this process with people is they don't realize what they're spending money on that they don't care about.
Right.
Like I got how much going out for subscriptions, or I got how much I'm paying in coffee. I mean, or, I don't even care about it that much. And so it's about, is the money that you have giving you the most benefit for what you want? And like I said, sometimes just going off into ether. You work hard to make it, and someone else is happy to take it.
Right.
So you got to keep track of that.
And then, the other part of it is you've got to be it's an ongoing process, but taking some steps is better than doing nothing at all, right? Because that's what happens for most people is like, oh, I'm gonna do this. I just need to get through, this week or next week or this month or whatever it is. And then next thing you know, we're 6 months later and nothing's changed.
Well, that gets into the fact that, spending becomes a habit. That's why they're called spending habits, right? And when you're trying to make a change, you're actually trying to change a habit. There you go. I walked right into
Changing your
it.
spending habits.
It's like
Yes.
I knew it was coming.
You knew what was coming. Well, see, one of the things with spending habits, like Craig was just talking about, is for a lot of us, when we're taught about money, we're taught that money is like math, and money isn't math. Math is math. right? Money is more than numbers. Money has emotion. Money has behaviors and triggers that goes along with it. And so it's easy to say, "Oh, Craig, I'm just going to do 1 plus 1 and that's going to be 2." But then that doesn't take into consider all the other stuff that like, wait, I got, sidetracked, or, the group wanted to go to drinks after work, or this thing happened or that thing happened, and I get completely sidelined, but my budget was all set up over here. I had all the numbers added up, in terms of the columns.
Well, once again, if you were just going to do things by the numbers and you're not emotional about anything, then discretionary spending for the most part wouldn't exist, right?
Right.
You're just going to be, what do I need to get by to live and put as much money away as I can? But that's not how we live. We live, make money so we can enjoy ourselves, so we can have a better quality of life, so we can do the things we want to do. And so that involves a lot of discretion and a lot of emotion. So you got to make decisions on where you want to spend your money.
Yes, absolutely. And the next, this slide really just talks about, trying to live within your means. This by no means a one all be all end all for anyone in terms of it, but it's just the idea and the concept that, with a little bit of planning, a little bit of, let's call it creativity, Craig, that we can, reduce some of the spending we might be doing.
Hmm.
Certainly using a spending plan and saying, I've got X amount of money that I'm going to use this month for these expenditures, whether that's discretionary spending, food outside or fun type of thing, and only going to spend that amount, that's going to limit me in terms of what I could be spending across the board.
Yeah, and sometimes here, instead of making this an exercise in pain, what I try to do is make it a game and say, can I get the same benefit for less money?
Right.
Right? Whether that's couponing, Groupon, getting a deal, whatever it is, it's kind of like I said, if you can turn it into a game, look, I got this and I paid 20% less than you did. Ha ha ha.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's a commercial, right? That's
Oh, it
doing
is?
like
Okay, yeah.
no, no, no. What is that? The hotels, one of those
The hotel,
commercials,
yeah,
right? Yeah, yeah,
Travelocity, I think,
yeah.
yes.
I knew it was something. It sounded familiar. All right, so where we're at, right? So right now we're in the middle of February, or towards the end of February now, I guess, but we're still early in the year, which means it's a great time to be looking at a snapshot because you have all of last year still fresh. All the numbers, all the stuff is there. You can take a look at what did you spend in all of 2025? How much did that work out to on a monthly basis? Now I know what I spend on a monthly basis. Am I staying in the same bracket in 2026? Or what can I do to make changes specifically between now and the end of June, right? The first 6 months of this year to see if I can be better in the second half of this year than the first half of this year. And Craig, I think this is really one of those like this is where the math comes in. This is where I've got to go back in and look at all of my numbers and get everything together and really try to figure this thing out.
Yeah, and what makes this thing even a little bit more stressful the last couple of years is we've had some inflation that's really hit people, especially in, the grocery store. So, it's even more important to know, what am I spending money on that I need and want, and what am I spending money on that really isn't adding to my equation?
Right, right. But I think it's a very good time of the year to be doing this and
Hmm.
taking the snapshot because you can be better this year than you were last year.
Oh,
Now, if you
sure.
were good last year, that's fine. But if you were like, hey, I need to make some changes, you're at a point where, okay, I can look at what I did last year and then see ways that I can try to make myself better in 2026. And that's really what that's about.
Sure.
All right, so little steps to big results. These are more of, hey, what can we do to be a little bit better, with our savings or, non-spending, let's call it that way. So the first one says cash only. And just so you know, what we mean by cash only is to take one, maybe 2 days a month and just say today is going to be a cash only day, which just means whatever I have on me for cash, and I know most of us, we're not carrying a lot of cash anymore, that's all I can spend today. I can't use the credit card unless it's absolutely an emergency, or the debit card unless it's an absolute emergency. I can only spend cash on that day. And there's a reason for that because cash forces us, Craig, to have that tactile response. Money is being separated from me and I have to spend it. Now, if I only have a certain amount, $10, $20, I better be taking care of what I'm spending it on.
Yeah, I have like 89 cents here. That's all I've got. But but you have to physically give it to somebody, which is, makes you have a slight pause.
Can you even get gum with 89 cents? What can you get for 89
I don't
cents?
know what I can do. And that's counting the pennies that they're not going to make anymore. So
Yeah. Oh yeah, not gonna make those anymore.
you used to get the
Uh,
penny candies, but you can't even do that.
Set a bigger goal, right? So this one is like like one of the things, and we'll talk about goal setting in a little bit. We have a whole thing we do with goal setting. But one of the things with goal setting is there's got to be something I'm shooting for. What am I trying for? What is it that I am, doing this, saving, scrimping, doing my thing. I've got to have that goal, that end thing I'm trying to save up for or get to because otherwise it falls off. If it's not there, if there's no motivation, it doesn't matter what the goal is, it's going to fall off.
Yeah,
Um,
you
we
got to
we
have a why.
joke we joke about shopping with a list and not using a cart when you go into a store because the if you've looked at shopping carts nowadays, they look like the back of SUVs. They are monstrous in size and they are done purposely like that because then it makes you feel like there's nothing in it. And oh, I can put more stuff in here and to fill it up that way. Shopping with a list is just that. I'm going into the store. I'm not going to get sucked into, Craig, the end caps or the specials or this thing or that thing that
Power
I
aisle,
may,
right.
I may or may not have needed, right? So I've got five things on my list. I'm going in. I'm going to buy the five things on my list. I'm going to get out.
hmm hmm
Craig and I talk about wants versus needs all the time. And, we understand that sometimes it gets very, very difficult to determine what is a want versus what is a need. But a lot of times what we ascribe to and really try to talk to people about is setting off this almost, it's like a cooling off period. Like that bright, shiny thing that I want to buy, Craig, like I got to get it now. Can I take a step back and wait a few hours, a day or two or three, and then is it still a bright, shiny object for me? Or is it like, you know what? I didn't really need that thing right now.
I don't know. My two daughters have convinced me that nobody has wants, everything's a need.
Everything is a need. Yes, we understand there are certain parts and times of life when that does occur and that does happen. Yes.
I have to
But
go to that concert, Dad. Everybody's going, right?
everybody is going. Yes. But so, and a lot of times we talk about this when we have bigger ticket items. Like if you were looking to purchase a car, for example, and you were going to buy the car, but you knew you were going to be taking on an auto loan to go along with that.
Mm.
Well, can I delay buying the car if it's possible? The car isn't, broken down and I got to get a replacement. But if I'm just looking to buy, can I wait 3 months or 4 months or 6 months? And I know my note is probably going to be, let's call it 400 a month, Craig. Fair enough.
Sure.
So
I'm
if
trying
I
to
did
let you
that,
go, but yes,
yes, like Fred Flintstone, he's running with the little feet underneath, right? He's got no engine, but yeah.
no
No, but
breaks.
so let's say it's 400 a month, right? So if I can delay for 6 months, but what I do in that 6 month time period is I take the $400 and I put it into a separate account. Because
hmm
now I know what it's like to live with that $400 payment going out every month and how that's affecting my lifestyle. But then
Yep.
I've also built up over 6 months $2,400 that I can now use as additional pay down. And maybe I don't have to take on, and maybe it's 380 instead of 400 that I'm taking on for my auto loan.
Yeah, absolutely. You can buy it down, or you've got a cushion in case you get behind. Lots of reasons to put that money away.
But one of the things that happens for a lot of folks is they envision I can deal with that. That fits into my budget again, but then it ends up not working out because they haven't really experienced living with that cost over a time period until they actually have taken possession of the item.
Right.
We're still early in the year, so the conversation is always about, hey, do you have a goal for this year? And it's not too late. Again, we're not out of February yet, so we're still in the first quarter. So it's certainly okay to say, well, I'm not really sure, but to be thinking about, gee, Craig, this is what I want to have by the end of this year, or this is what I would like to achieve as far as my goal for the end of this year.
That's right. If you get to April 1st, forget about it. Just worry about 2027. No.
Yeah. I don't know why that would be, but okay.
Oh, okay. Well, you said we still have time, so I'm
We
just
still
saying.
have time, there's still time there in terms of it. But, when we talk about setting goals, and now we're talking about financial goals here. We'll talk about overall goals in a second. But right now we're talking about financial goals and things that we're saving for or saving up to. And, maybe it's I just want to, add something to my house, whether that's a new appliance, maybe that's redoing a room, maybe that's an upgrade to the property, something along those lines. Okay, maybe that's what I want to save up for.
Is that a cappuccino
Maybe,
maker? I want to save up for a cappuccino maker. That's,
yeah, okay, that looks like a
you know,
huge one there. I'm sure you need to save up for that, but maybe it's a down payment on a home. Maybe you're a renter, you want to buy a home. Maybe that's the idea that you're looking to save for that down payment. Maybe you got debt. Maybe there's debt that you're trying to deal with. So now we want to make sure we're trying to pay down that debt, get ourselves out of debt, or at least, lower what we're currently paying in debt. Upgrade to a transportation, Craig,
mhm.
education for a child, and then, of course, ultimately for almost everybody is retirement. All the goals are different. Saving for them is different. Some are shorter term, some are longer term. And we'll talk about that in a little bit about how that all works. Craig, for a lot of us, we're trying to do a bunch of these at the same time.
Oh yeah, nothing ever just comes in when it's convenient or when you've got the extra money. It all seems to happen at once.
And you got to forgive us here with this, that we're having a little fun here because we are local, we are from the area. So we are wicked smart when it comes to goal planning and when we're dealing with goal setting and way goals work. One of the things, it doesn't matter what the goal is, whether we're talking personal, professional, money, whatever that goal may be, they all got to fall into the same smart categories. They've got to be specific. They've
Mhm.
got to be measurable. They've got to be attainable. They've got to be relevant and they've got to be time-based when we're doing them. The one for us, the light blue one there, the relevant, that's the most important for us because what we talked about when we're talking about goals, if it doesn't matter to me, Craig, I'm gonna not stay with it. It's gonna fall off eventually. That's why most people fail at, well, I think it's January 21st or January 22nd that the resolutions fail by.
Yeah, like you said, it's got to be relevant. Just because your doctor said to lose 10 pounds doesn't mean you're going to stop eating cake. I mean, it's got to be important to you.
Right.
That you want to lose it for a specific reason, either to feel healthier, to avoid a health scare, whatever it is, it's got to be important to you. Same thing with financial goals. They got to be important to you, not because someone like us told you you need to save money.
So we do have a sheet on this. So what I'm going to say is if you want, it's more of like a one sheet that just goes over, ways that'd be better at goal setting and setting up your goals. If you drop yes into the chat box, Melanie will make sure she gets that out to you at some point. But just know we do have it's a whole one sheet on just hey, ways to be better at goal setting and trying to prepare yourself for whatever goal you might be trying to achieve.
Hmm.
All right, 5 steps to save more money, right? How can I do this? How can I be better at saving your money? Well, we talked a little bit about recording your expenses. And, there's plenty of apps out there. The problem, Craig, is a lot of times we don't put everything into the app that we spent.
Or we want the app to do everything for us, right? We link it to our bank account, and so now it tracks everything, but now we think we've got it down, but we still don't have a real good idea of where we're spending our money because we're getting the after.
Yes. Now, if we're just using one card, say like a bank card or a debit card, and all
Mhm.
my spending's there, I can see what it is in a month. Fine. That works. Now I know where everything is spent. But occasionally we do have those I spent cash. Like Craig spent his 89 cents. Where did
Solid.
that get accounted for? It's those things that trip us up a little bit because we say, well, no, everything that was on the card, that's what I spent. But there was another, $50 that went out on lattes or something else that I didn't account for because it was cash out of the wallet.
Hmm. Hmm.
So just know it's important to make sure. A lot of times we used to talk to people about writing it down every time you spent money for like a week. And there were a couple of reasons for doing this. The most important is that there's this response to I'm writing it down and now it's staring me in the face. This is what I just spent on lattes, or this is what I just spent on, pizza this week, or whatever the case may be. And to realize, oh, why am I doing that?
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's just something to figure out what works best for you, but how you're able to keep track of all those expenses that you're doing. The buckets we'll talk about in a second. The buckets are more on how we're saving and where we're putting the money when we save. Um, you know, One of the biggest things we talk to everybody about is really don't try to get into the nickels and dimes. When we're setting it up and doing it for the beginning, when we're just trying to understand what the cash flow is, we know the money's going here, the rent, the mortgage, utilities, food, that type of thing. And then it's like Craig said, there's all this other stuff I'm spending on that I may not be getting any value from today. Can I find one or two of these line items and just say, you know what? I don't know when the last time was I watched HBO.
I don't either.
I don't need it, right? What's the point? Like, so it's that type of thing, or maybe there's a subscription or a service or something that you're paying for that you're like, gee, you know what? I don't really use that much. I can
Mhm.
take that out.
Yep. Yep.
We talked about treating yourself like a bill. Like this is important to be, again, we bring it back up so that it's in there and the thought process is if I want to save $100 a month, I've got to be blocking out. If I get paid twice a month, that means $50 per paycheck goes into a savings account because I've got to be putting that aside. And that's got to happen before I can start going and, doing all my other spending craziness.
Yep.
Setting smaller goals. We talked about the big goal, right? I got the big goal. I'm saving for whatever that is, down payment on a home, a new car, education for my child, whatever it is. But I need little things to keep me motivated along the way. I'm
Absolutely.
trying to save up for, so go ahead, Craig.
I was going to say, like you said, treating yourself like a bill doesn't mean to say, well, I got to start putting $500 a month into my savings account. You're trying to change a habit, if you're not saving as a habit, then you've got to create a new habit. And the way to do that is to do something that not going to fail at. So even if it's putting $5 or $10 a week is your goal, and you can do that every single week because you know it's not going to hurt your budget, at least now you're going, wow, I could do that. It didn't hurt. Now you're getting used to it. You may put a little bit more in, and so you kind of start ramping up to get to that goal to happen.
Right, right. And so one of the things that we talk to everybody about is creating an emergency account. Right, the statistic is what is it, Craig? It's like 60% of the population has less than $1,000 in the bank, something along those numbers.
Something along those lines. Yep. Hmm.
Listen, how debt happens is that I don't have money set aside to cover for situations like when the fridge goes out, the car breaks down, the pet gets sick, and I've got to turn to a credit card to
Hmm.
pay for that. In our industry, it's always been said to have, Greg, 3 to 6 months of basic living expenses set aside.
Exactly. If you can, yes, it's a great goal.
That's the goal. It's not like, hey, you got to put a chunk of money in there and that's 3 to 6 months of living expenses today. No, that's what we're trying to build this up to so
Hmm.
that it's there. And it's there and it's meant to be set aside in something that is completely separate from your normal checking, savings, anything that can be accessed simply and easily online or with a debit card or anything like that. So a lot of times we talk to people about setting up a separate money market account, something that's, what is that? Break glass in case of need. Is that what the adage
Exactly.
is?
Emergency break glass. Yep.
That Because if the money's sitting in a money market at the bank, you literally have to call the bank or go to the bank in order to move it into your checking or savings account. You
Hmm.
just can't dip in and grab it. So that's sort of that cooling off period, that wants versus needs, because if the money's sitting in the savings account, I can just go online and or on my phone and just ask the bank to send it to my checking account and then either use my debit card or write a check or cover it. Whereas in the money market, it's an extra step. So this is putting this extra buffer into, wait, that money's intended in case the car breaks down or the pet gets sick or something goes wrong. Do I really want to spend it on this thing today, right now?
Yeah, which those are two things. First off, if you have an emergency comes up, because something broke down, dog gets sick, you're already dealing with something that's stressful. If you don't have emergency reserves or you don't have credit on your credit card anymore because if you used them, then you create a second condition. Well, what am I going to have to give up this week that I could have, needed the money for? Was it I have to buy less groceries? I got to now be late on my rent, so having that buffer, even a small one, gives you some kind of peace of mind that if something happens, I can take care of it. My whole apple cart's not going to get turned over.
Right, right. I'm not going to have a complete upside upheaval in terms of everything that I do.
Right.
So we talked about the buckets, and the buckets, for just so you're clear to everybody on the call, we're buckets guys, right? Some people like pools, some people like bags. We deal with buckets. It's a bucket for this, a bucket for that. And we have three different buckets when we talk about where we're saving money, right? So bucket number one is that emergency reserve. That's the first bucket that's got to get filled. That
Hmm.
bucket's more important than anything else because, like we said, something's going to go wrong. And if there's nothing in that bucket, then I got to turn to either draining money out of my other accounts, which are not intended for that, or
Hmm.
I'm using a credit card, which is putting me in debt.
Hmm.
Bucket number two is this is a goal that I'm saving money is going to be used, but in a time period, say like 2 to 7 years.
Hmm.
Excuse me. This would be Craig. I'm saving up for maybe it's a change to my transportation, a new car.
Hmm.
Maybe it's taking a family vacation. Something along those lines could be even a down payment on a house that I'm trying to save for.
Right. Could be lots of things. Starting a business, anything. Hmm.
The last bucket is long term. This is more than 10 years down the line. For most people, this is usually is education for a young child or their own retirement. And here's the thing with these buckets. It's important to fill bucket number one first. That thing's got to get filled. But I got to be putting money in buckets two and three at the same time. So I've got to be sprinkling money here and there. I got to be saving for the long term, but I
Hmm.
need to save for the short term. Once the bucket gets filled, now I can start funneling that money into the other buckets. What happens, Craig, for a lot of us is that that money goes into this other bucket versus, uh, it gets spent instead of getting put in bucket two and three.
Yeah, right. Now I don't have to put that money away anymore. I've got some extra cash flow. It makes my life easier. I'm not too worried about the other things. Retirement's 30 years away. I'll catch up with that later.
Right. So that was really everything that we had for you today on saving versus spending. One of the things we offer to any of the audiences that we do is an opportunity for a consultation. It's a complimentary meeting, there's no cost. We know that people have questions, and sometimes it's not comfortable to ask them in a group setting, so it's much easier to do it one on one. That QR code on the screen, that's going to open up our calendar. You can schedule a meeting anytime that's comfortable for you. And again, it's complimentary. There's no cost. You can do it. The roadmap on the screen is just if you ever decide, hey, I'd like to go a little bit further than just the questions I have, we make that available as well. But really, the idea there is that we're able to do and have that conversation with folks.
Yeah, because once again, change is hard. If I'm going to the gym, sometimes it helps to have a training partner or a coach. And so consider us that training partner or coach when it comes to your finances.
Are there any questions in the chat box for us?
No questions. And I did drop the Calendly meeting link in the chat box as well.
Look at that. See, she's so ahead of us. So if you didn't shoot the QR code there, you can copy and paste. Melanie was ahead of me and put the link in there. Just either click on the link or just copy and paste it and save it for some time whenever you are ready. Just know it's not like, hey, you got to do it today and that's it. If it's, a month from now and you're like, hey, now I'm ready to sit down. We just had that happen with somebody. We did a presentation last year, and we're actually meeting with this participant tomorrow who was part of our audience because she says, now I'm ready. Now it's time. I'm ready to do it today. So just know it's there. It's available. Again, we're a nonprofit. We do this just trying to help everyone have a little bit better handle and engagement with their money. All right. On that note, I think we're just about on time, which puts
Thank
us
you
right,
so
right.
much, guys. I appreciate it. My
Abs-
takeaway was take a snapshot, little steps to big results in the bucket. So I'm trying to be good this year. I can do like less shopping, but I can't give away my Starbucks coffee. I tried. I tried to make my iced espresso at home. Didn't taste the same. So I said I better like not spending in some stores. So I'm crossing that out, but I can't live without my coffee.
Yeah.
So,
and believe me, we fully understand, though we're in the other religion. Ours is Duncan versus your
but
religion that
very
is.
informative, and I totally appreciate your time and your experience. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Have a great rest of the day,
You
everybody.
too. Bye bye. Thank you. Right, right.
Thank you.